talk to you about authentic assessment today because as music teachers and also as music education majors, you know about the, for music majors, notorious NTPA, it's all about assessment. How do you teach your student and how are you going to keep the documentation and how are you going to evidence if your student grew musically from one point to the other. And music teachers, of course, you're being asked to assess your students, right? To communicate with the administrator and outside people. So, but most importantly, assessment is important so that we can meet the musical needs of our students, right? So we're teaching so many students in one class, maybe 100, 150, a lot of students. But how, as a music teacher, do you know individual student musically? So how do you know? You can observe and maybe write few notes down, but you have to have some systematic documentation to know your individual student. So in this session, I want to share how to do that. It may not be perfect, but I just want to share my rubric and how you can do assessment in a music class. Okay? So need for assessment to individualize instruction. So in your student group, you might have high achieving student and low achieving student, and there's the middle achieving student group, right? And most of the music teachers design the lesson plan most of the time to meet the middle group. And if we do that, we're going to lose the high achieving group student and the low achieving group student, and the high achieving students will get bored because the tasks that are given in the class is just not up to their level. They're going to be bored because I already know this. How many times is my teacher is going to ask me to do the same pattern over and over again? So when I first started teaching, I did a lot of pattern instruction to my students because I feel that patterns are very important musical vocabularies which provides the readiness to improvisation later on. You need to have words in order to have a conversation, right? Same thing in music, you want to have a lot of rhythm patterns and tonal patterns in order to have the materials for improvisation later on. So I do a lot of pattern instruction, and we were sitting in a circle, and I looked at, let's say Jessica, and I gave her a pattern, and she kind of looked at me like, are you kidding? Like, we did this pattern like 10 times, I already know it, okay, come on. And she gave me like, bah, 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 bah. Like that, I was like, oh, I did something not good because I didn't know her level. So if I gave her that same pattern 10 times, what have I done? I just wasted her time, right? So I realized, I was an office teacher, and I said, okay, I need to document this somehow so that I don't give the same pattern to my students all the time. So individualized instruction. So give the necessary task to students who are high achieving students so they are not bored, and low achieving student and they're not struggling if I give a little bit more easy task. Evaluate my instruction. So as a teacher, we are so into lesson planning and giving instruction all the time, but how many times do we evaluate ourselves as an instructor, as a music teacher? How do we do it? If we know where our students are, we know how my teaching is doing in the classroom. So if my students are struggling, that means it's probably my fault because I'm not doing my job. If my students think that these music activities or tasks are just so easy, then I'm not giving them more challenging work. So to evaluate my instruction so that I can better design the lesson plan next time, okay? I know it's really, really difficult because we're teaching so many students and we have so little time, like 35 minutes? 20 minutes, like you spend 5 minutes getting them lined up, and then 5 minutes line up, you only have like 15 to 20 minutes. But the lesson has to be super effective in order to give the kind of musical experience in the classroom. So document musical growth. We're lucky, although we are very overwhelmed because, well, we're lucky because we see the kindergarten and we see them until 5th grade. So we have 6 years to know where they are musically. So we're actually seeing them how they grow musically from kindergarten to 5th grade. And as you know, elementary is a very critical years, to develop their musicianship and their music aptitude. And outside of the class, we want to communicate with other people, okay? So when I first started teaching, I had what's called parent-teacher conference, and we each had a desk. There was a music desk, there was a science desk, there was a language desk, and etc. And nobody would come to my desk. Like maybe Mr. Johnson will come like, hi, Missy, I'm sure my son is having fun, and then he will leave. Language and like, listen to the student, like the teacher. And I feel like, what? I'm important too. I think what I'm doing in my class is important. So next time parent-teacher conference come, I emailed the parents that, I have something to talk about your child. I have like evidence. So they would come and talk to me. Like, okay, that's what my son is doing or my daughter is doing in the classroom. Oh, well, how can I help my child to become a better musician? So they begin to have interest in what they're doing in the music class. Okay, and also accountability. People want to know, are you teaching what you said you were going to teach in classroom? Can I count on you? So accountability. Teacher evaluation. So assessment is central in teacher evaluation, and it's really important for your tenure and also promotion and etc. So teacher evaluation is very critical. And for music ed majors who are going to be student teaching, TPA is all about lesson planning, teaching, assessing your students, and showing the growth. Okay? All right, so advantages of authentic assessment. You want to assess in the context of learning, because young children, when they are asked to do something, they're not going to do it. They would rather do it because they want to. So if I take one student, like one first grade, take to the room, like, can you do this for me? And they're not going to, no, like, really? I was doing something fun over here. Why are you taking me out? Why are you pulling me out from this fun activity and let me do this, right? So especially younger ones, they're reluctant to perform on demand. Like in a pencil and paper, they don't like it. And we're doing music, so why don't we do it in a very musical way? So we want to assess our students in the context of learning. So our students are learning and playing, but the teacher is assessing them. They don't know that. Assessment process is play, especially elementary setting. So we're not asking students to go into the room and record their patterns or sing to the microphone, although some might like it. But it's all we do in the elementary classroom is playful, right? We love to design playful activities. We want to make this activity very playful. And it's an efficient tool for the teacher because we don't have to spend outside. So let's say if we're trying to assess outside of the classroom, think about how many hours you're going to spend on that. That's no, like you don't want to really do that because you have 200 students to assess. And that's going to make your life very difficult. So we want to assess in the context of learning and in the classroom. Important. Assess what students are familiar with, okay? So you have to teach the activities, and then when they've learned it, you're going to assess it. You're not going to give them new tasks and expect them to do it. So give the task that's familiar to them. Assess no more than 5 to 6 students on one dimension. So for example, let's say I want to assess my students singing, okay? I have 25 students in my classroom. Will I do 25 students assessing in one class period? That means singing one song 25 times. It's not gonna work. They're gonna get bored, right? And it's not good for them. So what I recommend is just do 5 students the most, 5 to 6 students the most on one single dimension. So for example, in a classroom setting, you might have lessons that are singing, chanting, and movement. You can assess 15 students. 5 students on singing, 5 students on chanting, 5 students on movement. But you're not gonna assess 15 students on one single dimension. Like imagine, kids love to do repetition, but they don't want to repeat 15 times, right? Other students also need to be engaged in learning. So when I assess Eleanor, all the other students must be engaged in something. So they are learning. At the same time, I'm assessing Eleanor. Assess individually in a group context. So we want to know their individual musical needs. So we want to assess the student individually rather than as a group. Practice so that you're comfortable with doing an assessment. So if you're starting this, this will be very new. You have, let's say you have a microphone and you have a card, assessment card, and you have to walk around You have to teach, listen to them, and assess and document on the card. There's many things happening simultaneously, right? So you want to practice how you're doing it in the classroom. Practice as if you're performing. Practice how you're going to assess your students. I used to have like other music teachers sitting in a circle, and then I practiced.